My friend Slowhomie just got top 16 at a Pokemon Regional. We're going to try to break down habits, the exact decisions that they made in team building, and the mindset that got them there, and how you can use all this in Pokemon Champions going forward. If you're trying to improve fast, these insights will be extremely valuable to you. All right, let's get into it. Slowhomie, what's up, man?
Yo, just got done getting back from the tournament and it was surreal, man. Like, it's so crazy. I've been yapping on Twitter for years and years, doing this VGC like Twitter content threads.
Yeah.
And it's just like so crazy to like actually get back from my first regional and like to have the result that I did. Like, I don't know, man. Like the whole thing it was a magical weekend. It was really cool. We popped off with some super heat mons. I couldn't ask for anything more, and I'm super excited to share the team building process and the whole tournament run with you, because I mean, it's really cool. And I think a lot of people were confused the entire weekend. Every time I talked to someone, they asked about my team, they were confused. And I think there were some really cool team building decisions that helped us be able to do so well. And, you know, my first ever official event, and really catch people off guard and put people in difficult spots that helped me pick up wins that I really should not have been picking up.
Well, it's really cool that it's like at your first regional, you did a top 16, which is very like super respectable, like a really good showing. And I think everybody loves your Twitter threads. You always make such great Twitter threads. I know I really enjoy them, and you have such good insights and in meta updates and strategies. So it's really cool to see you be able to go to your first regional and show them that you're not just all talk, you know.
Yeah, it feels great to put my money where my mouth is.
So going into the tournament, what was your expectation? Were you trying to go super deep, or were you just excited to be at your first regional?
Honestly, there were so many expectations that I was trying to manage. I mean, first off, like we learned that the tournament was going to be Reg I like 3 weeks before the tournament.
Yeah.
I mean, going in, I wasn't sure if it was going to be Reg F, Reg I, if it was going to be on Champions. And so my feeling was kind of panic at the very beginning, just because early on Reg I had the server. We had hundreds of people playing Reg I before that even got announced. I did all of these Reg I restricted duo threads, and really on in the beginning of the meta, I was really caught up. But towards that last like month or two, I hadn't played seriously at all, and I hadn't been prepped. So really panicked. But you know, from there I had to lock in. You know, I felt like I'm good, you know, and that's one thing that's really interesting about VGC that's really hard, is I think a lot of people have a very results oriented mindset.
Yes.
And that's very unhealthy. And it can lead you to weird places where you make bad decisions. And so I've been trying really hard this year, with like Smogon events, with the USPA events, to have a really process focused oriented mindset. Because my first year for the USPA was sort of the other thing I've been doing. I went 5-2, pretty respectable, not as good as your 7-0 you had that year.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, and so, you know, and then I also like really popped off in some Smogon events. I got like second in one, and it beat some really awesome players, and I was feeling really high. And then that second year, I went 3-4 in USPA. I scrubbed out all of my Smogon events. It was just not clicking. But this year I really focused on, I'm going to try and prep the best I can with my friends, and I'm going to try and prep like a regional champ. And then that way, hopefully the results will just follow. If I just get a little bit of luck with having the right team at the right time, I just got to put myself in the best position to be open for that to happen.
Absolutely. And I think like you said that like everybody's like super result oriented, and you said like that's super unhealthy, which is so true. Because even like myself being a regional champion, even though I had that result, I almost felt like that now that I won a regional, I need to like be top cutting everything. And and it made the game really unfun to play. So I think that mentality, like the mentality of going into a tournament and not judging like your value as a player or a person off of how well you do, honestly makes you play better at the tournament. It's actually like takes so much pressure off, and I think that's a really important insight to have going into a tournament.
Yeah, and I think the best mindset that I had, it was funny. I would joke about how I could throw any game and I'm going to lose the rest of them, and people were super positive, like, hey, you should focus on winning every game. And you know, for me, telling myself it's like I'm my own worst enemy, I'm the only thing I have to fear, sort of gets me in the zone where I can relax. But the healthiest mindset I had was was just play one round at a time. I'm there to have fun. I'm there to give them hell. I'm there to confuse people with Flamigo and Quick Claw Ditto. And even if I don't win, I'm gonna make sure they're not winning either. And so that was the healthiest mentality. But I'm not gonna lie, I was afraid that I was gonna scrub out, go 2-6,
Yeah.
something like that. So I had smaller goals, like I'm gonna try and win half of my games, and then it's like I would really love today too. And then it's like I would really, really love to get a high enough result to make some money. So I was lucky enough to hit all of those. But I think the main thing that was really helpful to let me play in the space that I needed to play in was to just sort of take things one round at a time, and just one game at a time, and just let it happen.
Perfect. Now you said some interesting words there. Did I hear Flamigo and Quick Claw Ditto?
Yes, sir. And those two guys were super cracked.
Okay. So we haven't seen your team. I mean, people might have seen it already. We haven't shown it on the video yet. But if you could describe this team with one sentence, like what does it do?
So what this team does is it gives you more options than your opponents. And so they have to cover for more things than they are used to. And so when you go through and look at some of the big decisions in this team and some of the little decisions in this team, it gives a bunch of flexibility and a bunch of tools that other people's teams are simply not prepped to deal with. And I mean, that's something that gives you safe positions that they can't do anything about. And then even in the 50-50s, I won at least 2 sets off of totally unforced errors by the opponent because they were overwhelmed by the amount of choices that I had. And I won games that my opponent really had locked up, or were still 50-50s. But I forced the errors with the pressure that this team put on. And so I think that's sort of really what the goal of the team was, is to give myself more options than my opponent had to make them cover for things that they just simply couldn't.
Perfect. So on screen right now, you guys can see the final 6 that slowhomie brought to the regional. But what I'm really curious about is how did we get to this final composition? Now, everybody, if you're new or not new, you always know that a team very rarely keeps the same 6 when you first start building. So I really want to hear your process. Let's start with the original 6 that you had, and let's go through your process, through your practicing, through your prep with your friends, of how you got to Ditto and Flamigo and what made those changes.
Right. So I think the first team building lessons that you can come to take into Champions is that maybe the real teams we build are the friends we made along the way. This original version of the team was just straight up sent to me by my friend Henkaki in Finland, one of the best team builders, best kept secrets in VGC. He said, I built a stupid Sandy Shock Serena team. I'm 10-0 with it. LOL. And so he sent me this team. So I think the most important thing is that I feel like a lot of people going into Champions feel like they have to build everything for themselves. And that's great. I try to build when I can, but I think an important thing with VGC is to realize that not everyone has the same strengths. Some
Right.
people are really good at doing prep docs. Some people are really good at building teams. Some people are really good at like figuring out matchups. And so, one of my things is that, I've recognized that I have friends who are really good at team building. And when they speak, I listen. And so that's sort of the first thing. And then now I can get a little bit into his team building philosophy that he's instilled in me. So there's one thing that's going to sound really funny looking at this team is his first rule is that there's no bad mons.
Okay.
And when you look on the screen, you're going to see a Flamigo and a Sandy Shocks and a Serena.
Yeah. No bad mons, huh?
No bad mons, but everything is there for a reason. So I'm going to break down the reasons for what we had, and then we can go through how that sort of changed and evolved. So I think that every team should have a thesis. It should have an idea. And the idea that we had been sort of toying around with is that the best offensive duo in Regulation I was Calyrex Shadow plus Koraidon.
Okay, yeah.
You've got
coverage.
Physical and special, you got spread and single target. They both match pace. We had tested a lot with Calyrex Ice Miraidon, which I know a lot of people did. I think it's a bit of a trap. It's hard to play because you have one fast, one slow, and it's really hard to figure that pacing out. And so we really liked how they matched pace. Their typings were amazing. They are just the best offensive duo. But looking at that, it was only like the fourth or fifth most common duo going to the Worlds. And the reason is because they had a huge problem on the defensive end. Calyrex, Shadow, and Koraidon, they're both frail. They're both Terra Hogs. You can't do anything into Trick Room. And so they had some really strong problems, but I'm a really offensive player. I like to be aggressive. And so that was a great duo for me. And then we also expected a lot of Calyrex, Shadow, and Zamazenta. And we felt like that we could, have a better duo into that if the Koraidon beats the Zamazenta.
Right.
And then we've got the Calyrex Shadow versus their Calyrex Shadow.
Okay.
And if we pack the right tech, we could do that. So the special sauce for the team is how do we fix all of those problems super succinctly? And, one of the main things is that Calyrex, Shadow, and Koraidon are both really frail. And there's a reason that you always see Calyrex Shadow running around with Zamazenta, and you always see Koraidon running around with Lunala. They both really like wide guard. And so what we felt was, because we had tested Cali, Shadow, Zamazenta, we even tested Koraidon Zamazenta. And we felt like if we could only add a Zamazenta to this team, it would be perfect. We would have the perfect thing. But unfortunately, we could only run 2 restricted. So we needed to find a Zamazenta at home, our great value Zamazenta.
Yeah. Okay, so that's where the Flamigo comes in.
Yeah. And I think people get the wide guard. And we've seen a lot of creative wide guard mons. At Orlando, there was a Marsh Stomp that I think got top 128.
What?
And yeah, there was a Toxapex that went 9-3 in Karataro. There was a Chestnut that was in day 2. There was a Araquanid that got top 4. So a lot of people had sort of similar ideas. So there's, a lot of wide guard mons, and we needed to narrow that down. And so we had 3 criteria for picking it, which is how you find the right niche mon. Everything has to have a reason. And our criteria that we really wanted, what we wanted to replicate for the Zamazenta in this slot was we wanted something with wide guard. We wanted something that didn't die in a single hit. And then we wanted something that could threaten an Oko on instant, because the body press that Zamazenta offers really complements the shadow moves of Calyrex Shadow for the normal and the dark types.
Right.
And so a lot of the mons that people were using, they didn't have body press, or they would have a boosted body press, but they were too slow to pick up the KO on instant. So we needed something fast and a fighting type. And so looking at it, if you narrow that down, if you look at fighting types that can ignore Intimidate and KO instant that are faster, you get 2 options, and you get Flamigo and you get Mienshao. And both of them die in 1 hit to anything, but if you put a Focus Sash on that, we can fix the problem.
Yeah, they can at least live one hit.
It can live 1 hit, so that's the best defensive calc that there is the Focus Sash.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
So we've got our Focus Sash Flamigo, and most people are familiar with Mienshao. It got like 3 top 8s in Reg G. James Beck took it to 5th place at a really huge event. And so people ask why we don't do that, but there's some a few things that Mienshao can't do that Flamigo does.
Okay.
And another important thing that both of those mons did that we really liked out of the slot, that I felt sometimes was better than Zamazenta, is they both have the move Feint.
Which is great.
And Feint breaks Protect, it breaks Wide Guard, and it's a really niche move, because if you click it in the wrong situations, you don't get a lot of value. But when you do click it, it's super good, which is in Reg H, Yuma Kinigawa won LAAC with a Feint Flamigo. And if you click the right buttons, it's busted, especially with good spread moves. And when we were looking at Feint, a lot of things that we wanted to Feint were actually Ghost type Pokemon. We wanted to pick off the Focus Sash for the Terra Ghost Focus Sash Calyrex Shadows. We wanted to pick off Focus Sash for Terra Ghost Chenpao. We wanted to break Wide Guard on Lunala and break their Shadow Shield. And Flamigo has Scrappy, which lets its fighting normal type moves hit the ghost types. So that was super important.
Okay.
And so that really lets the team operate in a situation that you can't. Because most people aren't used to Feint, and even if they are, they're not used to Scrappy Feint. I had opponents forget that was a thing.
Right.
And it's also really nice when you have Pokemon, let's say you have a Chenpao and a Terra Ghost on your close combat, you still break their sash, you still chip them down. And the close combat plus Astral Barrage is a really strong combo that even Terra oftentimes couldn't get people out of because of that Scrappy.
Right. And so
And then
I think like something that's really important here is, you know, a lot of people could argue that Mian Xiao is better than Flamigo. You know, it gets access to fake out, it's faster, gets wide guard, you know, feint, close combat. But I think what's important is that specifically for what you needed is you wanted something that could also hit the ghost types. Something,
Mhm.
you know, because ghost is actually fairly common in this regulation, you know, because of Calyrex. And so your choice between those two really came down to what do you need the most. And even though some people would say like, oh, you know, Mian Xiao's stronger, but Flamigo fit the role that you needed the best.
Yeah, and it was even more perfect because as a flying type, it couldn't be hit by the ground types. And two of the things which you really want to wide guard, Terapagos carries Earth Power as its coverage move, and
True.
Calyrex Ice carries High Horsepower as its coverage move. And if you had a Mian Xiao, they could just KO it with a coverage move. But if you have Flamigo, you can wall forever, which was really nice.
That's true. That's
And
true.
then I think the last thing about Flamigo that was really nice is it is worse than Mian Xiao because it doesn't have fake out. But I think that was a blessing in disguise because having detect instead of fake out was really clutch. There were games that I won off of clicking detect because they wanted to get rid of my wide guard mon, my focus sash wide guard mon. They double up. That's a free turn for me. And so I think the trap with Mian Xiao is that fake out's maybe one of the best moves in the game. But it turns out for what we needed, detect was better. So we were also kind of helped by not having that temptation to give into the fake out.
To give it the fake out.
So yeah, but
And
it all ended up working out.
and I think that's really, really important. I think it's really cool that, you know, a Pokemon like Flamigo in such a strong format can still find a lot of success in the right role with the right team. And looking at the rest of this team, as you practiced, obviously between the first team and the final product that you took, there's actually quite a few changes. So what led to some of those mon changes? You know, we got on the first team we have Sandy Shocks and Chi-Yu, and we have Serena, and on the final version we have Whimsicott, Ditto, Rillaboom. And so like as you practice, what made you decide to make these switches, and how did you end up deciding that this was the correct change for the team?
Yeah, I think another thing that's really important with Pokemon is to understand that it doesn't need to just be a good team. It needs to be a good team for you.
Huge.
This
That's
team,
huge.
Yeah, and this team, what it's designed to do is be very effective at damage trading. And so if you look in those roles, Sandy Shocks in the Sun, you're outspeeding things. And unfortunately, I love Sandy Shocks. He's one of my favorite designs, but that dude is 80% of a mon. He does not pick up the KOs he needs to do. But he outspeeds stuff like his Earth Power will only hit Miraidons for 80%.
That's crazy.
But the way that my buddy Henkake was playing the team, you hit the Earth Power and then you follow it up with the Astral Barrage, and then you pick up the KO.
Right.
And so he was able to effectively use this Serena and Sandy Shocks to do damage trades, and he was able to be very effective with his defensive switching to where when he was playing into Trick Room teams or to Tailwind teams or to teams with lots of priority, he was able to get around that. But I was not. And so I was not doing good with those mons. And so, especially into the Tailwind teams. And so I wanted some priority. I also wasn't doing good into Miraidon, even with my ground type. And so I wanted something for terrain control. So I swapped Serena for Rillaboom, and I swapped Sandy Shocks for Raging Bolt so I could get that Thunderclap.
Okay.
And that really helped with those matchups. Just for the teams that were common back in Reg I Part 1, that gave me the tools that I need. They're also a little bit bulkier.
Yes.
I'm a little bit more reckless and make some stupid plays. And so the original team was a lot less forgiving to my stupidity. And so if I could follow my friend's advice and just play good, with those mons, they would have been good. But that's not how I play. And so I needed something with a little bit of flexibility. Henkake is amazing with spreads. The Rillaboom and the Raging Bolt both live Glacial Lance every time.
Oh, nice.
Which is huge. So does the Koraidon, which a lot of people don't suspect. The bulk on this team was actually very sneakily bulky. I believe that everything except for Whimsicott lives a +1 Life Orb Astral Barrage as well. And so that bulk was really, really important. But yeah, so had the original version. It was good, but I wasn't making the right plays. I felt like I needed terrain control. I felt like I needed priority. The pivoting from Rolling Boom was nice. I feel like I needed some extra bulk, and those things got me that. So
Okay.
sort of like a month before Worlds, I'm not going to Worlds. I haven't played any official events. I hit top 500 on ladder with that team. And I check out. I'm like, you know what? This is good enough. The team, team's good for what it's at right now. I'll post it on Twitter and I forget about it.
Okay.
But when I come around and pick it back up, the meta has shifted. And so there were some problems that we had to focus on. Yeah. And then I guess before we move on, the other thing I want to talk about for team selection is that I could have picked a bunch of other teams. For a week, I tested all of these other teams that were good.
Okay.
But one thing about me as a player is that I need lots of practice. I need like 50 plus BO3 sets with a team before I can play it well, the way that I need to.
I'm the same way.
And so I was playing all of these, top cut world teams. I tried the world champ team, tried the runner-up team, tried top 4, tried top 8, top 16. I was trying them all. And I recognized that these teams are good, but not in my hands. So I need to go to something that I have familiarity with. And it might be a bit weaker of a team, but I can use my experience with the team to sort of get that experience difference against my opponents, and be able to outplay them. So we brought up the old Flamigo team, and we identified 3 key problems. And those were that now there were a lot more Tailwind teams and a lot more speed control. When we built it, all of the Calyrex Shadows Amazenta teams were more balancy. The meta was sort of in a more balancy place with a lot less priority, and now everything had priority. Everything had Tailwind, and it was a lot higher pace.
Everything was fast.
And then everything went fast. And then we had that, and then there were some other moves that were popping up a lot more. Smeargle was way more common now. A lot more Spore. And there was also a lot of other disruptions, like a lot more people running Rain Dance Tornadus, which, shuts down the Koraidon and makes us miserable.
Yes.
And so we had that. And then the third thing we noticed was I was getting my butt kicked every time by Calyrex Ice Miraidon, which was the second most common duo, and then Miraidon Lunala, which was the fourth most common duo. So I was getting my butt handed to me in those matchups.
Okay.
So we had 3 problems to fix, and then looking at the data, I wasn't ever bringing Chi-Yu. Scarf Chi-Yu is really great, especially with Feint. You've got Sun, Chi-Yu in the Sun. We know all the memes. It does a whole bunch of damage, but I could not get it into the right spots. And so I was just never had Chi-Yu in a spot where I was clicking the moves I wanted to click. I wasn't bringing it in safe, and so Chi-Yu was on the chopping block.
So you were looking at your replays, and you were looking at your usage data. And you were just noticing that I'm not bringing Chi-Yu. Is there something more valuable I can put in that slot that I'll use more often versus this new updated meta?
Yep, exactly. That was the call we made.
Okay, and so what did you change Chi-Yu to? What did you end up deciding on?
So Chi-Yu, the first thing we tried, which we immediately liked, was Whimsicott. Giving us that Tailwind helped us match the pace. Encore was starting to help into some of these disruption moves like the Spore and the such. And so we'd had experience with Whimsicott and Reg G, and we really liked matching the speed. And so that was pretty good. We weren't ever clicking light screens, and my buddy Henkake, he loves doing damage calcs, which is, get yourself a friend that can do damage calcs.
Get a friend that does damage calcs.
Yeah, he had the best spreads. But he was doing the calcs, and it turns out light screen wasn't changing things from 1-hit KOs to 2-hit KOs and 2-hit KOs to 3-hit KOs.
Interesting.
And I wasn't clicking it. So he suggested Helping Hand, and then we did the same exercise. And you think Helping Hand would be super nice next to this Life Orb Calyrex Shadow, but stuff was living at just 10%. It wasn't quite enough. And then we switched to Taunt, because I was really pissed at Amoonguss one day in Smeargle. I'm like,
they're annoying. They are annoying.
Because, we have some tools for those guys. It's like we can set up substitutes. But I'm like, but it would be really helpful to give Whimsicott value, because Encore is only helpful after they've clicked a move once.
Yes.
But into a lot of the teams, they will roll you over, you quick turn once. We'll get into this more when we talk about matchups, but in the Lunala Miraidon matchup, I was never winning. But with Taunt, I could not let them get that Trick Room up, because if they get that Trick Room up and they get in that Ursa Luna, it's game over for me. But once I was able to stop them from doing that, stop a wide guard from happening, stop a spore from happening, and do that proactively, stop a tailwind, stop a rain dance, it really opened things up. And so that was super, super clutch. We had that on there, and we solved the first two problems with just one Mon swap. And so once we knew that, we had that on there, we knew it was the tech for the tournament. It won me a bunch of games, and we just had one last problem to fix. So, and that was that Calyrex Ice Miraidon, and then hopefully the Miraidon Lunala matchup.
Okay. And before you had, so you changed Chi-Yu to Whimsicott. It helped you match speed. It helped you with taunt to deal with a lot of the Smeargle and the Amoonguss that were giving you problems, and that helped solve quite a few issues for you. And now on this team you have a Raging Bolt, and in the final version you end up changing that. So what made you change that, and why did you decide on the change to the new Mon?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting one. I think so. It's sort of another lesson you can carry through the Champions. Is that reviewing your play and sort of using practice and not just theory is really valuable, because in theory we should have a Raging Bolt on this team. James Evans had a Raging Bolt on his team. It was amazing. It's like, we have the sun, we have spread damage. You could pick stuff up with Thunderclap. You get a free photosynthesis boost. It's super bulky. It has the stats of a restricted. Clearly, without any practice games, that is the third best Mon on our team. And it should be maybe even the second or, the second best Mon over one of the restricteds. And so it looks good, but going back through the games, it was just never coming, because a lot of people had these very tech Mons, these very tech things. I was bringing Flamigo anytime they had wide guard, which was super common. It's like I was bringing Flamigo anytime they had two or more darker normal types. That was really common. I was bringing Whimsicott anytime they had a Tornadus or a Whimsicott or a Smeargle or a Lunala. And so all of these use cases ended up coming up a lot more. And I needed a Mon that was really good in just one or two matchups, instead of a Mon that was generally good across the board. Because I had the damage I needed from the Calyrex Shadow and Koraidon. But, Raging Bolt was good, but it just wasn't coming because I needed something different. And so doing the practice was really helpful. I talked to some people and they said I was crazy for swapping it out. But then I had lots of other friends. I talked to them and they said, hey, here's my niche Mon. And we threw together a list of 12 different Mons that we were going to try. There was crazy stuff on there. I mean, we were looking at like Brubonnet, we're looking at Ensign, we're looking at putting Chi-Yu back on there to help with Calyrex Ice, because we didn't have an ice resist. We wanted something that would maybe be bulky. We were looking at Rhydon for the Miraidon Cali Ice. If we go with like a Terra Fairy Rhydon, that could be really good.
That'd be cool.
And so we had this whole list of Mons we were going to test. But recently, before we were on the Flamigo team, we had been playing a Miraidon Cali Ice team with Ditto, and we loved Ditto. So Henkake and I said, it's the funniest guy. Let's try Quick Claw Ditto first. And that dude miraculously fixed all of our matchups.
All your matchups.
It was insane.
So
right.
I think
of them except for Miraidon Lunala, but
but it's
you can
impossible.
Have a bad matchup.
It's impossible to have a good matchup into everything. But if you can fix your major issues, that's really big. And I think it's cool that and anybody that's new to VGC going into Champions will learn this eventually, that something that should work in theory doesn't always work out in practice. Like you said, in theory, this team should have Raging Bolt, but you kept having these issues. And even though it was like, it's Raging Bolt, it's one of the best Pokemon in the whole game right now, in theory you should have it, but it just wasn't working. And so you had to find something else that would work in practice, not just in theory. And that's like super hard to learn sometimes.
And from sort of an abstract higher level thing, what this did was really helped with giving our opponent bad choices.
Right.
So for example, now into the Calyrex Ice, I am going to lead with my Calyrex Shadow, and I'm going to lead with Koraidon, and I'm going to use the fast offensive nature of this team and my frail Mons, just as a way to help me get Ditto in the right spot. And so I'm going to double attack your Calyrex Ice turn one. And so you can tear it and you get up Trick Room, but now you're in a dilemma. If you Glacial Lance double KO me, I get to bring in a Ditto, copy your boosts, and reverse sweep you with Glacial Lance. So you can't KO me. But if you don't KO me, I still have a Calyrex Shadow and a Koraidon. I'm going to double KO you, and you're toast.
Yeah.
And so it really let me put them in a difficult position that they weren't used to. You know, they're used to, I get up Trick Room, I sweep, I win. And now I was forcing them to make these really difficult choices. You know, and they had to KO me, but not KO me. They had to be really careful about what they're bringing in and what slots. And in that matchup, I could also, you know, they bring in an Incineroar. I copy their Incineroar. A lot of the Calyrex Shadow, the Calyrex Ice nowadays aren't running Clear Amulet. They're running Leftovers. They're running, you know, some of those other items.
Yeah, like the Leech Seed.
That's really their advantage.
So and that helps us lead into like when you're using the team, like what like walk us through like your process of like team preview in your matchups, your turn one. Like what's like your goal with this team? Did you have multiple strategies versus different things? Did you have like a lead that you used more often than not? Walk us through like actually playing the team and what you were looking for as you tried to win those matches.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So for this team, it's a really good team. I used to have the problem as a player that I would throw games I should be winning all of the time. Because I wouldn't recognize my win condition, or I'd recognize my win condition and I would throw it away. And so I've got a prep doc that they'll post later this week that goes through the matchups. But this team, it's really important that you understand what you need to do in each matchup. Like the Lunala Miraidon matchup, what I need to do is I need to not let them get Trick Room up, and then I need to get a quick KO. Preferably, I need to snipe the Ursaluna or the Incin on a switch.
Okay. And
so that was my thing in that matchup. And maybe to the Calyrex Ice Miraidon, it's like, you know, for every time I saw Miraidon, I'm like, okay, it's going to take 2 hits to do that. I want to use a Whimsicott, Moonblast, or a Flamigo CC to do that. So that way I can bring Calyrex in the back, and then click Barrage. And so most games you would bring Calyrex Shadow in the back, and you'd probably use something like Koraidon as more of an early game breaker. But there would be other games where you use Calyrex Shadow as sort of the breaker for the other one. So you identify the mon you want to win with, and then identify what you need to eliminate to get that mon in a winning position, and then you sort of execute on that.
Okay.
And
so it's like, so with each matchup, and people that are interested in this, make sure you follow slowhomie, Andy Bakes YT on his Twitter, because he'll post more about his matchups there, and he has great insights in general. But with these teams, and as you build them, and in any generation, in any format, you have to have like a clear understanding of what you need to do to put yourself in the best position. A lot of people might play that matchup and not realize, like, I need to make sure that Trick Room doesn't go up here, or I need to do XYZ, like this is my biggest threat, and if I can clear that from my opponent's team, I have so much more like freedom to play the game.
Yeah, exactly. And this team also was a really good one where we had a team building advantage, and if we knew what our opponents wanted to do, we could use that to our advantage. For example, Calyrex Shadow with Life Orb is usually my win condition.
Okay.
So we know that the opponents are going to bring their normal types, they're going to bring their dark types. But we have 2 fighting types. Most teams don't have 2 fighting types. So they're prepared for 1, but they're not prepared for 2.
Right.
And so, depending on the matchup, I can say, look, I can play aggressively with my Koraidon and just get a quick KO turn 1, take something out, and they'll think they've won because, you know, now they've got their Incineroar. My Calyrex Shadow is toast, but then I bring out the Flamigo and I OHKO their Incin with a close combat, and they weren't ready for that. You know, and so that's another thing that I would do a lot, as I would bring both Flamigo and Koraidon, and I just have to, at the beginning of the game, identify, okay, who do I need to protect more? If I need wide guard late game or faint late game, I would bring Koraidon first, as my breaker, and then Flamigo would be the cleanup fighting type. But, you know, if I wanted Koraidon late game, just because I needed that fire type damage, like into these Lunala matchups, because the only thing that's dealing damage to an Electric Seed Lunala is my Terrifier, Flare Blitz, and Sun. So I would usually have to bring Flamigo in the front of those games. So
Okay.
understanding what my opponent had and how they were trying to beat me helped me position myself to be able to beat my opponent, because I could predict much easier what they were trying to do, because I understood what they needed to do to beat my team, and I could play around that.
Perfect. And that's like something that takes a long time to learn too. Even like veteran players, when they build a new team, they don't automatically know like what they need to clear or how they need to play it to further their game plan. That still takes losing a lot to understand how each team functions the best and what threatens it the most.
Right. And I think losing is a great teacher. And I think if I can give one advice to players going to Champions, is that after each game, you ask yourself why you win or why you lost.
Yeah.
And
especially why you win and why you lost and why you won. Like, that's huge. A lot of time it's only why you lost. If you can also identify why you won that game, that also teaches you a ton.
Yeah. And if I identify a game, it's like, I won because I sniped their instant on a switch. And if I didn't do that, I don't win the matchup. Then you, in game 2 and game 3, you might be able to use that to your advantage and say, okay, this is why I won. So, and at the beginning, you might not have the most insights, which is the tricky thing about, getting better when you don't know a lot. But I think if you do that after every game, ask yourself why you won or why you lost. And then if you play with teammates, which I think is the best thing you can do to practice, I think the best thing I've done this season has been running sets with my friends Bruno and Konkoldonk, and just helping them play a lot, play with a friend. And then, I can't always see why I won or why I lost, but the times I can't, my friends usually can. And they think, oh, you lost because you did this, or oh, you won because you did that. So that's sort of the other superpower, is having a second set of eyes to help you.
Absolutely. So also with your matchups through the tournament, at what point through the tournament did you realize, like, hey, I could actually go really far with this? Like, was it round 2, round 3? Like, what was like the match that you felt like defined your run, where you really felt like, I'm going deep?
So I mean, to be frank, I think it was round 6. I felt like I could finally day 2, because round 6 I actually got the 6-0 to qualify for day 2.
Yeah, that's huge. So, yeah, you're like, I'm doing it.
But what I did with that match is, it was against my toughest matchup. It was against my Miraidon Lunala team that my opponent brought.
Yeah, okay.
And so I beat that 2-0 against a player, that was also doing pretty good. And I made some really aggressive plays. The end game for that one, what we had was, I had my full health Focus Slash Flamigo, and I had my +2 Calyrex Shadow.
Okay.
And they had Tornadus plus Miraidon in Tailwind.
Okay.
And so I sort of realized that if they KO my Calyrex Shadow, I'm donezo. I need the, and I realized it would be incredibly stupid for me to leave it open. And it's like, maybe if I protect it and they attack into it, I can use a close combat from Flamigo plus another close combat. If they locked into a spread move, I could also, the only damage that Tornadus had was Bleak Wind Storm, so I could wall with Flamigo forever and win that way. But I sort of identified that I was in a bad spot, and the only way I win this is if they misplay, and if they let me attack with Calyrex Shadow. So I don't click Protect, I click Astral Barrage, I click Coast Combat. They taunt my Flamigo, they click Terra Fairy, Dazzling Gleam. It doesn't pick up, and I pick up the KL. And I was so pumped. I'm like, okay, this is my worst matchup. I figured out what I needed to do, and it was long odds, but I think I recognized those, and I think that was something that, made me feel really good about myself as a player.
Yeah.
Was playing my toughest matchup and recognizing, hey, I need to do this to put them in a spot, and I'm going to put them in that spot, and I'm going to need a little bit of help from my opponent. Because the nice thing that I sort of surprised me about this tournament was that into my problem matchups, I had an easier time into some of these than I did on ladder. And the nice thing about problem matchups is your opponent doesn't always know that they're the bad matchup.
Yeah.
And so, that experience I had with the team, nobody had played Flamigo before. They didn't know, how to handle my team. And I'm like, I knew how to handle their team.
I doubt there was somebody there that was like, oh yeah, Flamigo, my best matchup.
Yeah,
I've been labbing hard versus Flamigo.
yeah, no, and every single one of my opponents day one told me they were not prepared for it. Another thing that I felt really proud about the team and the decision we did was round two. I played a Terapagos plus Miraidon matchup, and if I didn't have Flamigo, that's an awful matchup. I don't have wide guard for the thing.
Right.
It's like I can't break the I can't break the Terra Shell and then get another attack off. But I had two fighting types, and so that worked. And then the next round, I played a Koraidon plus Terapagos. And I beat that too. And beating two Terapagos in a row as a Calyrex Shadow player is awesome. And I felt,
yeah, it's tough to do that.
Yeah. So I think those are sort of two moments that sort of defined it for me. And then I guess the other one that was really special for me was in day two, my first opponent was Otonio. He got second. It was his first tournament too. He was playing out of his mind. I beat him quick game one, and then he just got every single turn of every single game right. Game two and game three. And I was super close to his instant lived on 5 both games.
Ooh.
If I would have made 1 or 2 more aggressive reads, I think I could have gotten him. And there was one game too, I sort of knew, I'm like, oh, I should go for this. And it bit me in the butt. So, I was feeling a bit down. I lose one more game and I get elimination. And my round 10 opponent is Kenneth Gamboa, one of the best players in Mexico. And he's running the exact same team.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, no. So, and he washes me game one. And so, at that point, I'm like, look, it's like, this is my worst matchup. I got to make some calls. I got to stick him in a blender. I got to do some stuff he's not expecting. And then he adjusted. Normally, the mons that they always bring is they will either read Incin plus Lunala or Miraidon plus Lunala with the other of Incin in the back, Miraidon in the back, and then the Ursaluna. And so going in, I'm like, for some reason, I feel like he's going to bring Whimsicott. And so I dropped my Flamigo for my Rillaboom to sort of be able to slow them down. And I used the taunt on my Whimsicott to sort of match his pace. And I caught an Ursaluna on Coast Combat on a switch, I think. And so I did really good there. And then the game 3, I was just sort of playing out of my mind. I called every single one of his switches. And it was still really close. We got to a 50-50 endgame. And so where he's got his Lunala plus his Terra Bug Incin, which is what, beat me the last game I had. And then I've got my Koraidon plus Lunala, and I just sort of need to call if he's going to wide guard or if he's going to trick room, and he forfeits.
Oh.
The game wasn't over. He had a Miraidon in the back, but but because I had been calling so many things for all day, and he had to worry about I think I might have actually had like Calyrex Shadow plus Flamigo. He had to worry about Feint. He had to worry about me attacking both slots. I had Substitute, and so really the vast amount of options I had led him to play that sort of unforced error, and he forfeited when he still had a shot if he called my play. I had to call it. So that was crazy, but I felt awesome that I managed to ended up 2-1 versus my worst matchup. And the only guy that I lost to was a close 3-game set to the guy that took second at the regional in my worst matchup. And so I felt really, really proud of that.
Yeah. And that's something to be totally proud of. It's especially, playing against one of the best players in the area, but mentally you said that you were feeling like down about yourself going into this matchup, and then you're paired against such a great player. How did you like get into a headspace to where you weren't just like tilted and throwing the game, that you were able to kind of buckle down? Like, what is there something that you said to yourself? Is there something that you did to like recenter and go into this game versus your worst matchup versus a great player with confidence?
Yeah, there are sort of 3 things I did. The first one is I sort of gave myself up. I said, look, this is my first tournament. I went, 7-1 day 1. If I go 7-4, I still had a great tournament run. I shouldn't be, there's not, it's like, it was my, if I lose, I'm done. But really, I'm like, you know what? There's not any pressure on me. Any pressure on me is on myself. I'm sort of like, if this is how it ends, I did great.
Yeah.
So there was that. And then the other thing is that I told myself is he doesn't know that this is my bad matchup. So I've been recapping each of the rounds on Twitter, but I made sure to specifically when I was talking about the matchups to not say, "Oh, this was my worst matchup," just in case any of my competitors were reading.
Which is smart. You know, you never know. Somebody could have seen it.
Yep. So, and so I told myself, I'm like, you know, I'm cooked, but he might not know that. And he didn't. You know, in the game 3, he thought, you know, he was cooked when he had some options. And then the other thing is in my prep doc, what I have written word for word, one of my friends had asked about using the team. It's like, how do you beat Miraidon Lunala? And I told him, it's like, you need 2 things. You need to make every single play correctly, and you need them to make at least one play wrong. At least one play wrong. So I was prepared for that, and I knew to myself, hey, look, I've played this matchup a ton. You know, I know what I have to do. There are plays that, you know, it's like I need to taunt the Lunala turn 1. I think game 3 into him, or one of the game 2, I actually went for, he had his Incineroar out. This was in one of, I might be getting my Lunala Miraidon matchups mixed up. He didn't have the Electric Seed out yet. And so I go Moonblast, Terra Fairy, Flare Bits, and remove the Lunala.
Okay.
And so I'm in a great spot. So I'm like, hey, he's not expecting that. That's my one. That's my freebie on there.
Okay.
And so, but I was sort of prepared for that, you know. And then I think the one in game 2 and game 3 is that I taught him, and you know, he's like, okay, he clicks an attacking move. But he doesn't KO my Whimsicott. And the nice thing about that is the problem with Lunala for that team is I can't kill it in 1. And with a Moongeist Beam, it OHKOs my Calyrex Shadow. And with the Moonblast, it OHKOs my Koraidon. And so, but if I can lock it, I clicked Moonblast. And so I encored it into Moonblast. So I knew I had some safety. And then the other thing is that Ox is a pseudo taunt, because that gives them one more turn. They can't click Wide Guard, or they can't click Trick Room.
Yes.
And so that was another sort of play that I had worked out is, you know, it's like, if they don't take my Whimsicott, I can use Encore to buy extra time, which I need. So anyways, long story short, in that matchup, it's like I was able to keep a cool head because I knew that I needed to play correctly and they needed to make a mistake. And that's a scary spot to be in, but it's a win condition. And sometimes your win condition is your opponent throwing. You know, and so you play to that, and I knew what I needed to do, and I was just waiting to see if he would give me what I needed, and he gave me what I needed, and I was able to run with it.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think people would be surprised how often people have won tournaments just from their opponent pretty much throwing a turn. It really can be just like, if you are playing as consistent as you can and your opponent has one slip up, that's sometimes all you need to get your foot in the door and take the battle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think Pokemon's I always hear people joke. I think Aldrich and the Showdown community always says Pokemon's a 2-player game. Never underestimate your opponent's ability to throw. And it's true.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's where the practice comes in. Because, you know, I've played this matchup, even though it's my bad matchup, I've played it, you know, 30, 40 times. They've only played it once. And, you know, for him, if he lost the game, he was out too. So he's under a lot of pressure. You know, and a regional's a tough thing. And so, you know, it's like I made mistakes throughout the day, but my opponents also made mistakes. And so, you know, I think that's something that, you know, you shouldn't be afraid of any player because, you know, even the best players are going to make mistakes. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's like if you happen to be Snooze and you win a regional because your opponent throws away their Z move. With the gas on.
That's tough.
That doesn't take anything away from your win, man. You were killing it. You were playing super well. You did what you needed to do. It was these regionals are marathons. I mean, during the last rounds, like my hands were shaking. Oh my God. I was hungry. I had to go to the bathroom. You know, it's like my mind was shot.
You're totally fried by the end of the day. Like, it's tough.
It happened.
So, any last words about your tournament, about your team, about your run? Before we get into some rapid fire questions.
Any last words about it? Pokemon is fun. Have fun with it. I think don't be results oriented. Although I'm not gonna lie, having results feels great.
It does feel great.
Like too cocky, but like I mean, I was mentally prepared to be happy with a 4-4. I mean, my biggest worry that I was gonna go like 2-6 or 3-5 or something, and you'd be like, oh, you know. Mm-hmm. But I think that the thing that's really helped relieve the pressure is it's a hobby. Be process oriented and not results oriented.
Yeah,
And stuff will come
especially
eventually.
yeah, especially if it's like your first regional. Sometimes your goal should be as small as I just want to win one round. Like
Yeah.
and that can be enough. And I know like I don't go to very many tournaments these days. I'm gonna start trying to go to some more. I'm at a point now in my life where that's a possibility. But even to the few regionals that I do go to, my one goal is I just want to go even. I would love to. I just want to go even. And I think for me that's a goal that's very achievable. And if that's something that I can do, I feel like I had a successful tournament. Like I don't feel like you need to be like I need to win the tournament or this was a total waste of my time.
Yeah. And then I think that one of the best advice I got, I asked people for advice, and there were regional champions giving me advice. Someone gave me the advice. They said your goal for your first regional should be to play every round.
Yes, that's a good one.
You can go 08, but don't you dare go 07.
Yeah.
And so, that was sort of my goal, and I think that was really helpful for me. It's like, hey, I'm here. This is my first regional. I just got to show up and play every round.
Yeah.
And that's good. And so I think the other thing about process is that a lot of people don't acknowledge it very much, but there is so much luck that goes into VGC outside of RNG. It's like my one in my first game, I have a Calyrex Shadow and a Quick Claw Ditto versus their Calyrex Shadow. I've got an 80% to win that speed tie, and I lose it,
Yeah.
And so, I should have done that, but I had good matchups. I had decent matchups. Someone asked James Evan, who got second in Worlds, what his Calyrex Ice Miraidon matchup was with his team, because they had tried playing it and they couldn't beat it. And he said that his matchup was to dodge it.
Yeah.
He's like, I can, it's like if I play 3 of them and I can luck out a win versus 1, I can lose the other 2. If I win my other games, I am going to, it's like I can make it to World's top cut. Yes. And that's exactly what the Madman did. He won all of his other games.
Sometimes
he played 3 of them, he beat 1 of them, and he made it to finals of Worlds because he dodged the matchup.
I took my 2 brothers to their first tournament, I think a year ago, at San Jose. And before the tournament started, I turned around and I told him, I said, it doesn't matter how much practice you've done. The one thing you cannot control is who you're playing and what they brought. And you just have to be okay with that.
I brought a team that I felt put me in the best position. I'm like, this will let me outplay. I can't control my matchups, but you know what? To have a really good run, I need to get a little lucky.
Yeah.
And I got a little bit lucky. I did not play a single Calyrex Ice. I was kind of disappointed because that's Ditto's time to shine.
Yeah, because
I only brought Ditto to like
hard.
4 games, the whole things. I prepped so hard. It's like I swapped out that Raging Bolt for Ditto specifically for Calyrex Ice. I didn't face a single one. That's crazy. But I had some bad luck too. I faced 3 Calyrex, 3 Miraidon, Lunala. But I managed to beat 2 of them. And so, it's like I think that I can't complain. I think that my top 16, it's like I think to myself, man, if I would have just gotten 1 turn right, I would have been in top cut. And my easiest matchup was actually the matchup that ended up winning. The same one that Gio brought to Worlds. I have a really good matchup into that team. And my opponent that I played round 11 played that in the sort of the playing round for the top 8. And so, I'm like, I think to myself, it's like, what did this happen? But it's like, I also have to acknowledge, I'm like, I got 2 paradowns. My first opponent didn't bring any restricteds. It's like, so, I got really lucky. My second round opponent, they had a team sheet error that gave them a game loss. And so it's like, I got lucky. I can recognize that. I think in Pokemon, we need to do a lot more of sort of recognizing the role that luck plays and just sort of telling yourself, hey, I just got to give myself enough shots. And if I do the right process, if I prep what I need to do, one of these times I'll hit the matchups, I'll make the right plays, and it'll all work out.
Perfect. Okay, let's do some rapid fire questions. Okay.
Rapid fire. Let's do
rapid
this.
fire. The MVP on your team.
It was Flamigo. Flamigo, there were matches I dropped Calyrex Shadow and brought Flamigo. The wide guard was great. I won 1 or 2 games off of wide guard. And then I won a bunch of other games. Every single opponent in day 1 told me, well, I think 7 out of 8 told me that they were not prepared for Flamigo. He OHKO'd Incense, he OHKO'd Ursalunas, he, picked
Yeah.
up those Terapagos. It was absolutely the MVP of the team, which was really cool because he was the spiciest, weirdest little guy, no points in Reg I, but he was the glue that held the team together, and really upheld that central idea of fixing the defensive errors that Calyrex, Shadow, and Koraidon had, letting them shine. And giving me more options than my opponent with the Feint and the White Guard.
That's awesome. Okay. Most overrated Pokemon in the format.
Most overrated Pokemon in the format. That is tough. I think that, it's hard because every team is different. Like, for example, my team, only one person brought Urshifu Rapid Strike into me. But I mean, I had Sun, I had lots of things.
Yeah. Okay.
I think the most overrated duo in the format, in my opinion, is Calyrex Ice plus Miraidon.
Okay. And that's a popular one.
It is a popular one, and I mean, it got top 4 there. It's really hard to play. The Mons have some pacing things. Miraidon really wants to go fast and move first. Calyrex Ice really wants to go into Trick Room. And it's a good duo. I for a week I thought that's what I was bringing to the event, but I could just not make it work. And I think you see a lot of people have creative choices. I think Gary DeTorna had like an Iron Bundle. Amelia Forbes had a Choice Scarf Annihilate, but I think you have to get really creative. But I think it's overrated, not because it's bad, but because it's good, but you have to get really creative with it. And I think that the trap people fall into is if I put 4 good Mons next to these guys, it's going to work. And I think you have to get a little silly with it, have to get a little bit goofy with it. The other Calyrex Ice Miraidon that was in top 4 of Karataro, one of them had Pelipper and Choice Scarf Urshifu. The other one had a Infestation Wide Guard Araquanid with Electric Sea.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so, yeah.
I would agree with you that I do think that duo is pretty overrated. I never really thought that it was as hype as everybody said, but I was always more hyped about the other Pokemon that they paired with it than the duo itself. Okay, if you had to make one change to your team right now, what would it be?
That is so hard. I mean, because I think things did the things that we wanted them to do. For the most part, trying to think of what we could do. Ditto, we had looked at Terra types. Normal never came up. I mean, it comes up for Calyrex Shadow. But that didn't happen. Trying to think. That seems pretty good. I think you could change the team some more. I think the core is Flamigo plus Calyrex Shadow plus Koraidon. I think you could potentially change 1 or 2 Mons, but I think you can't just. I don't think you can just change one. I think you'd have to make multiple changes.
Okay.
So yeah, I think this team is at where it's at. I think there are changes you could make to maybe improve some of those matchups, but you might have to make 2 or 3 more changes.
It'd have to be a couple. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and last rapid fire question. What's one tip that you have for somebody that's going to be going to their first regional in Champions?
That is a very good question. I think show up and have fun, and use it as a learning experience. I had a blast. I made friends. My wife came with me on the trip. She was kind enough to pack me lunches. That was really helpful.
That's nice.
Stay hydrated. Stay
this
fed.
guy got top 16 and has a wife. Oh man, that's not fair.
That's the real challenge. But I think just show up and have fun. I think that a lot of people care too much about being good. And I think care about other people caring that you're good. And I mean, I would always, joke with my friends because I've been yapping on Twitter for a long time, and a lot of people on Twitter, and the VGC community only listen to you or listen to your ideas if you have results.
It's very true.
And I would always joke with them and say, "Oh, the streets know. The streets know we're good. The streets know we got ball. The streets know that Flamigo can hang."
Yeah.
And so, not needing that external validation. It's hard because we're all human. We love external validation. It's
absolutely
great.
I love it.
But I think just have fun and learn as you go. And if you focus on the process, eventually you'll get to the spot where you're good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, slowhomie, I appreciate you being out here with me on this call, walking through the team, walking through the changes, telling us about your tournament run. and giving us a little insight about how to team build, how to have the mentality to go into a tournament like this, and what it takes to really try to get those top performances. And I know that the people watching this will also get a lot out of it. So thank you for being on the channel and sharing this with us.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the platform. And one last quick thing. I really wanted to get on stream so I could do stream shout outs, but I didn't happen.
Oh yeah, get some shout outs. Do some shout outs.
Yeah. So for shout outs, I want to shout out my lovely wife for supporting me. VGC was a hobby I picked up after we were married. So, brought her into the whole new world. I want to thank Saul Morones for lending me a Switch. I don't have a Switch.
That's so funny.
Long story. He lent me a Switch. Tilsey in Germany, he lent me his Mons. That was super helpful. Got those traded to me, so I didn't have to worry about that. Hankake for the team and all the team building. And then there's a bunch of Discords, but the 3 ones I want to shout out most are the Team Utah Discord, Go Utah.
Yeah.
The Shimon Kitchen, my sort of main prep group. And then I'm part of another bigger one called GBVGC for Global VGC. And everyone was super clutch. It was so helpful to me. I mean, between every round, I called my wife. And then the next thing I did was I texted how it was going in the Discords, and having those cheerleaders there, it really helped give me the energy I needed to make it through the regional.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. Shout out to everybody he just shouted out. VGC is all about the community, all about the friends that you have. I love being a part of the Discord and just all the wacky stuff. I think somebody's always cooking something new every day in the Discord.
Yeah. People are always out there cooking crazy stuff. It's so much fun. But I mean, I built lifelong friendships from VGC. And so, I mean, to sort of bring it full circle, maybe the real teams were the friends we made along the way. Our amigos and our flamigos, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations again on the top 16. That's a great showing, especially for your first regional. And hopefully you can get to some more regionals soon. Eventually, you won't even need a Switch. You can just have your phone and you can just do it on Champions.
Yeah, there we go. So we're already planning on going to Merida next year.
Perfect.
So that's fun. So, I mean, it's the other thing about VGC that I think is really unique from my perspective is you don't have to qualify for World. You don't have to, you can do things where you're at,
Absolutely.
My wife and I, we've been doing travels, and we've been doing travels that we've enjoyed. And now we're sort of, we've made it a little bit more money. We're a little bit more secure, and now we can afford to travel to a VGC event. And so I really appreciate her support on that. It could have been some other vacation, but instead we went to a sweaty VGC regional.
Heck yeah. That sounds awesome to me. I don't know.
It was a blast. So
cool.
Gotta keep going.
Absolutely. And hopefully we can see more of your tournament runs in the future and have you on the channel again if you want to. I know eventually you're going to be on the big dogs and you're just not going to have time for little old me, but it's okay.
You know what? There's nowhere else I'd rather be. Even if I have the offer from any of those bigger channels, I'm gonna take it here to Snooze. You get the news from Snooze
that's
first.
what I'm talking about. All right, Slow Homie, you have a good rest of your night, and we'll talk to you another time.
You too. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.